things about flying GPS that are really, really good. If you're flying and you don't know what to do with your aircraft, it's going off one way or another, and you're not really sure, what control changes to make to get it to do what you want, all you simply have to do is do nothing. Take your hands off the controls and it will stop and hang there. Unlike an aircraft that does not have GPS. An aircraft that does not have GPS will just continue in the way it was flying until you tell it to do something else. Those will just stop and hang. The other thing is, what's really nice about them, is they know how to come home. So if you're in fear of losing it for whatever reason, you can't see it, it flew over a bunch of trees or whatever, all you have to do is one of two things. On the Phantoms that we're using, you shut the controller off. Just shut the power off. It'll sense that it's no longer in contact with that controller, and it will retrace its path and come back to where it took off from and land pretty much at your feet. It's pretty awesome that they can do that. A drone that doesn't have GPS will not come home. It'll just continue on its merry way until it runs out of battery usually or hits something. So that's something really nice. Another thing good about GPS is you can have it fly repeating patterns using waypoints so it can, fly the same thing that it did before. It's nice if you have to do some kind of ground survey or something like that. But yeah, you pretty much need one that absolutely has GPS mode in it. Now, some of them have a different setting on the controller, and I think we talked about this. You can shut the GPS off, and it'll kill all those functions. It won't come back to home if you lose it. It won't do this, it won't do that. That mode is called attitude flight control. Attitude flight control. And what that's mostly used for, people doing like high performance stuff like that, racing things, the GPS thing would limit some of the reactions to how fast you could do it. So they shut that off. So they're totally in manual control. But that's really nothing that, people that are using this for a photographic platform have to concern themselves with. So yeah, always keep it in the GPS mode. That's the safe way to fly it. Now, basically too, before we get off this subject, the GPS for the drones, just remember whenever you're powering up those drones, they have to acquire usually 6 GPS satellites. Why 6? Because a box, if you think about it, has 6 sides. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the back. And basically, since your drone's moving in many planes of space, okay, not like a car that's just moving on the ground, it's also moving up and down and stuff like that, it needs that complete box around it to tell it where it is. Can you fly it with less than 6 satellites? Yeah, but it's not going to be that accurate coming back to you. If you want to guarantee that it's going to come back to you if something bad happens, you need to have 6 satellites. Now, the Phantom that we use, whenever you power it up, the lights will blink on the back, and every time it finds a satellite, it'll blink green. Then when it blinks green steadily, you know you found 6. It'll go through a bunch of flashes saying I found 6, then it'll stay green. That's how you know that you found them. So that's the safest way to do it. If you can't pick up any satellites, your GPS isn't going to work. So it's not going to come home to you, and it's not going to be stable in flight either. You would have to fly it completely manually. All right, so that's pretty much all I really wanted to do with that stuff. We were going to, like I said, take it out and fly a little bit, but we're not going to have time for that, so that's not going to happen. So we're not going back to school, evidently. So, with that said, next thing I would like to do is like I always do. Just briefly go over the tests. Now, here, I'm going to give you a little screenshot. You probably can't see crap on that. You can't. Okay. I'm going to go over the test just like I always do, just to keep this, as familiar as possible. All right. I'll give you like a second to get something to write with. This is from last lecture. Number 1. Why should text elements be arranged in blocks? Why should text elements be arranged in blocks? Number 2, what is the safe area on a TV screen? What is the safe area on a TV screen? Number 3, we may not have really talked that much about this one, but I'll explain it now. What problems do vertically oriented graphics encounter in a 16 by 9 screen? Let me explain that one. This whiteboard is almost 16 by 9. And a vertically oriented graphic would be like if we had a bunch of text elements like this. The problem is you got a lot of extra space on the sides that's blank. So that's the problem. So vertically oriented graphics in 16 by 9 usually have a lot of empty space on the side. So maybe it's something to avoid. Number 4. What 2 things can increase the readability of TV graphics? What 2 things can increase the readability of television graphics? What can make them more readable? Can make the fonts bigger, desaturate the background. Remember, high energy colors up front, low energy colors in the back, that kind of thing. There's a lot of them, but just want 2. Number 5. Standard viewing distance for a 32-inch TV is assumed to be how many feet from the screen? Standard viewing distance for a 32-inch TV is assumed to be how many feet from the screen? Remember that? That's kind of a reference so you know how big to make your graphics. The answer is 10 feet. Number 6. List 3 types of graphic pages. List 3 types of graphic pages. Talking about scroll and the rest of them, those things. Number 7. What are illegal colors? Number 8. What is a keyed, K-E-Y-E-D? What is a keyed graphic? Number 9. What are 2 types of flats? Scenery flats. What are 2 types of flats? That was in our last lecture. Number 10. What's the difference between a chroma key and a virtual set? What is the difference between a chroma key and a virtual set? Number 11. We just talked about this. What is a major limitation of a microwave link? What is a major limitation of a microwave link? Number 12. From today again, list at least 3 ways a TV signal can be transmitted back to a TV station. List at least 3 ways a TV signal can be transmitted back to a TV station. Number 13. How should background lighting be handled for a good chroma key? You need very flat background lighting. How should background lighting be handled for a good chroma key? Number 14. This is just a general thing from the lab. What should a camera operator do when you leave your camera? When you walk away from your camera, what should you make sure is done before you walk away from your camera? Here's another general question. Number 15. Do cuts, simple cut on the switcher, do cuts require a command of preparation? Number 16. What kind of things should we look for on a location survey for a remote using a microwave truck? We're going out on a remote using a microwave truck to get the signal back to a TV station. What kind of things should we look for? First of all, we need a direct line of sight back to the TV station or something to bounce it off of. We need an unobstructed view. That's the main thing. and probably access to power, in case you don't have a generator in there, but most of them do. Okay, number 17. Define cyclorama. C-Y-C-L-O-R-A-M-A. That's the curtains in the television studio, like the black one that's shredded that we have. And explain what they're basically used for. Okay, what's the difference, number 18, what's the difference between a microwave truck and a satellite truck? What is the difference between a microwave truck and a satellite truck? Number 19, what does a geosynchronous orbit really mean? What does a geosynchronous orbit really mean? That means the satellite that's bouncing our television signal back down to Earth off of our satellite truck is rotating at the same speed as the Earth is turning, so it appears to be standing still. Number 20, drone question. If your Phantom drone, or, well, that's what we were flying, so if your Phantom drone loses contact with your transmitter during flight, what should be done? Somehow it loses contact with it. What should you do? There's two answers, really. Just to be safe, shut it off. And if everything's working right, if it loses contact with your transmitter, it should return home. You shouldn't have to do anything. So there are two answers to that. Neither one's correct. Number 21. What's the difference between GPS flight mode? What is the difference between GPS flight mode and attitude flight mode? Now remember, when you're on attitude flight mode, it's totally manual. GPS is off. That thing's not coming back to you. Whenever you're flying it in one direction, you take your fingers off the toggle switch, it's just going to continue by momentum in that direction until you tell it to do something else. It won't stop and wait for another command like it will in GPS mode. Number 22. What is the FAA maximum allowable altitude for drone flight? We just talked about that. It's 400 feet. Number 23. How many miles from controlled airspace must drone flight be limited to? How many miles from controlled airspace must drone flights be limited to? It's 5 miles. Number 24. How many satellites must a drone acquire? How many do you have to pick up for accurate GPS flight? The answer to that, remember the box has 6 sides, is 6. And number 25, what could be done to make this class better? Probably, that's up to you, whatever you want. What could be done to make this class better? Probably lack of a pandemic would make it better. That would be big on my book. So that's about it. So I tried to keep this about as normal as we would normally do it in real life, guys, under the circumstances. So anyway, miss you guys, and I'll be in contact with you email. I don't know if I'm going to post any other, there won't be any formal lectures, that's for sure. I might post some video messages or something like that. But like I say, you feel free to physically call me. Sometimes that's just easier, or or text me or email me. I check my emails from school. I try to check them on the days for sure that I have class. So I'm not checking them constantly. And those of you that haven't turned in the last test, that needs to be done. And hopefully your projects are going okay. If you have any questions about those, let me know. So, I think that's really all you have to do. And your projects, remember you're doing, you're simulating a live remote. You're going to do a couple little packages, each about 90 seconds. About number 1 about safety, number 2 about food and other items, number 3 about adjusting to the new life, and number 4 about how things change after this is all over. I gave you more detailed instructions before, but yeah, that. So make sure I get that last test. And as far as this test that I just gave you right now, I'll get a hold of you guys and I'll tell you when I expect to see something on that. We're in school technically till the first week of May, end of the first week of May. So we've got some time. All right then. See ya.